The Everything Apartments podcast is provided with support from the Apartment Association of Greater Los Angeles, better known as AGLA, serving residential landlords throughout Southern California through education and advocacy. Visit aagla.org. Hello, everybody. Eric Christopher here, and you're listening to the Everything Apartments podcast. Here we get into all aspects of multifamily investments, from buying and financing properties, day-to-day operations and management, and also reinvestment strategies. The mortgage market is something of a heartbeat in the apartment investing world, as well as really every sector of real estate, as the majority of purchases do involve a purchase money loan, and then refinancing is also a key component in wealth building. And it's a big enough driver in the market that we like to have a couple people on a year in that sector to keep abreast of how that particular part is affecting the market. And certainly with the paradigm shift in interest rates over the last year or year and a half, now is a great time to do that again. We have a wonderful guest who's an industry veteran in the mortgage origination space, so we get some more insight, and we'll bring him on in just a minute and we'll learn a lot. But first, I'll tell you about our firm, WSC Realty Advisors and WSC Property Management. WSC has been helping buyers and sellers and managing apartment units in Long Beach for over 17 years. Let's say you're tired of managing your units, you want to travel more, you want to relax on your vacation and not worry about, well, what if there's a plumbing leak or what's going on where I'm far away from home. That's kind of a burden at times. Or maybe you do have a manager and you're just not quite getting the response and the results that you're looking for. We can definitely help you. WSC never wants to be the biggest firm in Long Beach. Instead, we stay smaller and more agile to bring the quality that you want. Now, we can also help you if you're looking to acquire more units here or put together a 1031 exchange scenario, either here locally or in an out-of-state market. Visit WSC-PM, call, text, or email us. All that information's in the show notes, and certainly if you're watching on YouTube, you can see it right over my shoulder. Mention the Everything Apartments podcast and get your first 2 months of management absolutely free. Whatever your challenge with your property, WSC has the solution. Today we have with us Nick Pantuso. Nick's been up and down the block in many different aspects of real estate and investment, from finance, investment, development, acquisition, management, and accounting. I don't think there's any other aspects to cover. He's also an investment advisor representative. So add to that CPA. So he's a real estate broker, national license lender, the NMLS, and I think he spent an entire lifetime getting licenses, Nick. And Nick operates the C2 Financial branch in Westlake Village, along with Pantuso Financial Services. So Nick formerly was a CFO of a Santa Monica-based real estate investment and development firm, vice president of finance for a Beverly Hills-based diversified holding company and multifamily syndication firm. And heck, way back when, just to add a rounding to it, began his career at Deloitte & Touche, that little tiny accounting firm, actually international. So he's got all the bases covered in almost any discussion of real estate. Nick, it is excellent to have you with us today.
I'm happy to be on this with you. The one thing you might want to add to that is I can sweat pipe and frame walls as well. I was taught in the backyard how to do that.
Yeah, well, we both got our degrees in accounting from Long Beach State, but I'm guessing and hoping that was years before I got mine. And a minor in communications. You're like me a little bit on the management stuff, hands-on. I'm an accountant in my background, just like you are, but I've got a modest set of tools in the back of my car, and a lot of my management assignments, I don't mind getting out and using those tools. Just a way to ward off boredom from being behind the dumb box all day looking at numbers. But I think you and I both share that as a little bit of a side part of our gig.
That, and also to protect your clients from getting gouged from a plumber for changing a faucet valve or something. There's a broker here in Ventura, probably the best broker that I know, that says, because so many people say, I don't know if I want to buy because interest rates are so high, I want to wait for them to come down. And you and I understand the issues with that. And she tells everybody, date the rate, divorce the landlord, and marry the house. because that 7% mortgage today, if it ever gets back to 5.5, that house is going to go up 200,000-300,000 in value. Now you're going to be priced out again.
We all have a supposition in our mind of what's been of the recent past. Right now we're going, oh wow, the rates are high. Well, they're only high relative to what they were at historic lows, because right about now is when all the old folks that we know are talking about the Carter administration, and their mortgage was 14% at the time. And it takes a minute to reflect on that and go, okay, yeah, I remember in 2006 through 8, where I was talking to principals of apartment buildings that were going, yeah, I got a 6% loan. And you're going, all right, that's really good. And then they crept down a little, maybe even into the fives, and you go, wow, 5 point whatever. That is super awesome. So we get used to these little periods of the cycle that we get ourselves married to whatever that paradigm is. Then it's certainly, as we know, will always shift. Prices. What does the mortgage rates do to pricing and volume? We have an intuition about that. Well, let me show you something real quick. I'm going to share the screen real quick. So I track Long Beach multifamily. As you can see, I did it in two categories. It's the basically 3 to 4 units. I just couldn't track duplexes. It's just too much data. But like, 3-4 is probably a good metric.
Yeah.
And then the 5+. Now, as you can see, I kind of put some notes there. The COVID thing, we had the little shock, came right back. I remember talking to you right as that was happening. You go, oh man, what are we in for? And then it bounced right back in 21. But see transaction volume kind of dropping, which I would kind of call naturally over the cycle, maturing and sort of receding back. But then we got the interest rates working against us as well. And now we see, okay, 2023. All right, what's that look like? Well, 2024 isn't real good to look at right now. It's just kind of too early in the process.
Too early.
What I did was I've got another formula in there that's like the rolling 6 months from today back. 2 months from now, it'll be the same 6-month look back.
Sure.
And you can kind of double. If you want to just do a rough down and dirty on the annual, you just double those numbers. 34 times 2 is 70, shy of 70, and then the bigger buildings
just shy of 80.
So that's pretty intuitive. Now, the thing that's interesting to me, if we over the page on prices, look what the prices have done since the high 2022. But you come back 2023, 2024, this far, rolling 6 months, they're pretty flat. I would expect by now we would have seen that rolling 6-month number off like 10 to 20%. And we haven't.
It's not. You look at your 2022 column, right? So we're about 22 months out from the Jackson Hole meeting where Jerome Powell said we're going to start pumping rates. 75 bips, 75 bips, 75 bips, 75 bips, 50 bips, 50, 70, and then you pull forward to today, 22 months later, pricing's the same because the demand hasn't gone away. So the 2.875 mortgage is now 6.875. And speaking to one of my brokers in Texas and Colorado, she said everybody she's talking to thinks this is the new normal. And more borrowers are not listening to their mom and dad anymore, which is like very wise, because when rates do creep down, they will either own real estate with equity growing or they'll be priced out of the market. So this is a great metrics, the 2022 and the on market today in an increasing rate environment, man. We haven't seen the hit.
Yeah, well, it's counterintuitive because you naturally think, okay, here's an investor, could be 3 or 4 units, or could be the bigger units. That you'd say, okay, what's the best thing I can do with my cash? So we've got an eroding cash on cash return based on these interest rates. So what I was getting, let's say 5, 6, 6.5, 7% cash on cash. Now we tack this high 6, 7% mortgage on, your cash on cash is going to scratch. And are we still just banking on the appreciation factor? Yeah, I'll feed the building for a while, get my rent increases what I can. But certainly I would have thought there would have been a more linear kind of inverse relationship to price per square foot. You know, I didn't mess with cap rate on this or anything. It just goes
Sure.
straight to the price or price per square foot. I thought I would have seen a little more of a downtrend on that, especially on the rolling 6 month number. So we'll wait and see on that. But let's take a step up in altitude. We're just
Yep.
kind of touching on some minute ago with relativity to President Carter area and where we traveled through the early part of the century. I love saying that, early part of the century.
I know it makes it.
Tell me what you think. We'll get to crystal ball in a minute. 10-year treasury. You know, we all think about that, and I've got a chart on my Thinkorswim trading platform with the 10-year treasury, the Fed posture. You know, they're fighting the inflation bug. I'm going to take the last slide here, and that's a 12-month CPI. Okay, so it looks like, if I'm reading the tea leaves of inflation, is like we spiked out. It's been coming down, but it's still higher than our norm. And why I kind of defer to you on this is we kind of know, like, you know, election year, and any incumbent president would like to make the economy look and feel better for everybody. But the Fed, from what I read and heard, is like, hey, we can't lower rates. Like, we'd like to lower rates, and I know you want us to lower rates, but like, we're still fighting this inflation bug.
For sure.
Tell me about what you see around that going forward through this crazy election year. The fun's about to begin. This is when I sort of turn off the news and don't
Exactly.
watch it. It's a circus in and of itself. But what we're talking about here is like all of that noise and all that pseudo excitement. What does that mean to apartment borrower in the next, say, 12 months forward?
Well, okay, so I look at the last 12 to 24 months, 40% of our money supply has been printed in that period. I remember seeing inflation like at 8 something, and then it drops down to what would I want to say, like 3.8, right? And we had this massive decline over 12 months, and everybody's hoping, you know, for a rate reduction. I'm not a big fan of what I'm about to say, but I was working physically doing some stuff, and I was exhausted. It was like 9 o'clock. I stop by McDonald's and get a number one, right? Big Mac, Coke and fries, and a 10-piece chicken McNugget. $21. So do I think inflation's really at 3.8? I look at it from this standpoint. They're looking at durable goods. They're looking at washing machines and microwaves and furniture and this, that, and the other. Well, I don't eat any of that stuff. I eat eggs, bread, cheese, and milk. And that stuff is through the roof. So I don't think we've got the inflation thing under control. I think what I do know is that when Reagan slammed his hand down on the podium and told Gorbachev, take down this wall, and you remember this, I think we were probably high school, college at the time. The Cold War ended, just stopped, and aerospace and defense left California like rats from a sinking ship. Douglas, Northrop, Litton, Hughes, Pratt and Whitney, all of those aerospace and defense contracts dried up, boom, and we tanked, right? We fast forward to 2008, and strippers and gardeners and hairstylists, not that they're bad people, they're buying their third, fourth, and fifth investment property. They can't afford the rates when they go up and adjust. So there's the tank on that. So I look at the two black swan events there as the Cold War ending and basically free money, the liar loans, the stated income going away. My question is, because everybody seems to be working, everybody seems to have money in the bank, our first-time home buyers are no longer the 24, 25, 26-year-old, they're the 31 to 40-year-old. What is the black swan event there that may bring us to a screeching halt? Because as long as people are working and they got money in the bank, they may not spend as much, but I don't see the inflation thing slowing down on the goods that I buy every week. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And the one thing I observed last week in Tennessee was that, you know, we're in our own little bubble, right? California's, it's almost like its own country. Everything is considerably different here economically than it is almost anywhere else in the country.
Agreed.
And when you get out of California, it couldn't be as close as Arizona or as you go further east. Now, obviously, the big metro areas like New York, the upper eastern seaboard or whatever, we may have some similarities, but like you can notice stuff. I mean, gas. I'm in the middle of Nashville and gas is 3.25 a gallon.
Isn't that crazy?
And we could go all day on why that is, but you go out to eat there and you can physically notice that the check is 20 to 25% less than it is here. So it kind of like takes some context that we're like in the belly of the beast here, subject to whatever whimsical tides that the state and the county, city governments will put upon us. And then you add in this election, you're thinking, okay, typically somehow, some way, the economy looks and feels all good during an election year. Right now, maybe not so much. Now, and we're not going to go fully in the rabbit hole of politics right now. But I was listening to a really cool podcast by a guy named Sean Ryan. I don't know if you heard of him or not, but you can look him up later. But he had Vivek Ramaswamy on there, who whatever, like he's not a dumb guy, and he was running on the Republican ticket or whatever, trying to win that nomination. He's since conceded, but very interesting podcast whereby he said, look, the Democrats are on the run and don't 50-50, like that Biden's the candidate at the end of this year for the election. Like they're throwing out names like Michelle Obama and Gavin Newsom being in there somewhere. So I guess me saying that wasn't to start being a Sunday morning talk show or anything, but it seems like we're in for some fireworks as we approach the end of this year, one way or the other. I think there's no way around it, no matter who's running. Trump's running and whoever else it's gonna. But I'm just trying to use that sort of theory I have that I don't think a lot of people disagree with. Like, where does that settle us? Let's say it's a year from now, the end of the first quarter. What does our little apartment market in Long Beach or Southern California, like, what does that look like compared to now? You kind of intonated on that, but it's an interesting year.
That Black Swan event maybe happen between now and the first week of November.
Who knows? Certainly.
Right?
Speculation being what it is, but it doesn't matter what interest rate environment, political environment, any environment, the crash of 2008 through 9 through 10, even deals were getting done then, deals are getting done now. People have the need for a mortgage now and we'll get them. I'm a great example, right?
Yep.
Here I go into the market. So what does a borrower need to think about now more maybe than he did before, or the easiest and best way to get a loan done for somebody right now?
Before I jump into that, let me just give my two cents on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Self-actualization, security, relationships. And at the very bottom of that is air, food, water, and shelter. So this is for people that want to invest in real estate. I don't need to self-actualize and be the best person I can be, but I'm going to do it because it makes me a better human being, right? And I'm going to be intimate in my relationships and listen and build relationships because it makes me a better human being. But at the end of the day, I need air, food, water, and shelter. So if you're looking to invest in real estate, God's got the corner on air. He's handling that, right? The Resnick family controls the water in the state of California, right? The people that own Pomegranate, the wonderful corporation, whatever that is. But food and shelter, you know how I feel about rental real estate, 1 to 4s, 5 to 500s. People need shelter. The other thing I'm a big fan of, and I think you know this, is, and I hate to say this, but I'm a big fan of fast food restaurants, triple net leases all over the state, because if things do go sideways, I know many families that lived off at the time in 2008, the dollar menu for 2 years at Jack in the Box.
Yeah, I was one of them.
Right. I mean, everybody was feeling it. So anyhow, what do borrowers need to do today versus the environment we had 6 years ago? Nothing has changed with their requirements, what is going to be required of them, their documentation. Almost everything's going to be a full doc loan. Tax returns, pay stubs, bank statements, credit report, declarations. Pretty simple stuff that, when I work, I hone in on that stuff to make the process simple. I think where they need to be here is marry the house, date the rate, divorce the landlord. And if I could get a borrower to think about a duplex, triplex, or fourplex as their first real estate investment, And even do that with an FHA loan or a VA loan, or on the 1 to 2s, a 5% down loan, rock and roll. Then a year later or so, start thinking about their single family, but keeping this duplex, triplex, or fourplex, because in 30 years, in this long, slow march into enemy territory, this thing's paid off. And let's just look at a fourplex Long Beach at the traffic circle. 30 years from now, that's going to be 20,000 a month gross, I'm guessing. Right.
Based on the
So
trend. Yeah.
based on the trend, which you and I talk about trends, we're talking like 50 years worth of trends, not just the last 3-4 years. So if you don't want to buy because interest rates are high, I challenge you to change your thinking, because you're going to be out of the market for the next 5, 6, 7 years. Because like we talked about, as soon as rates go from 7.5 to 6.5, that $800,000 duplex is now $1 million to $1.1 million duplex, because people are comfortable making a payment at $1 million purchase price. And when the rates drop 14.5%, 1/7 from 7.5 to 6.5, they're still comfortable with that $8,000 a month payment. So what does the value of the property do? What now goes up, because that payment, they're comfortable with that payment. The next person's going to come and buy it a higher dollar amount, higher value. So I encourage borrowers to date the rate. Just date the rate. If you don't get into the market, you won't be in the market.
That's a
Is that
great
good?
saying, I mean, date the rate, because, intuitively, we're looking for prices to slide a little bit. And a lot of these markets, like using Nashville as an example, they have 80 people per day in migrating, and you could do what you want with the rates. Naturally, like in some of these tertiary markets, maybe more rural, that you would see like prices come down, desperate seller, whatever the desperation is. But, there's a place like what it felt like when I was over there last week is like maybe Orange County or say LA, Southern California, whatever,
Yep.
in the early 80s, where, you look at the prospects of growth over there and you go, okay, this place has a 10 to 20 year run in it. It's almost like a no-brainer at any rate. But dating the rate, getting back to what you're saying, is it's not forever. Okay, so you're gonna feed, maybe you're gonna feed something right now a little bit, hopefully not a lot.
Right.
But in a growth market, what do you get without rent control, by the way? Rent increases. You have the chance to increase the rents and get that thing to a positive. Maybe it's not a big positive, but it's or at least not a big negative.
Sure.
And then here we go. And whatever the cycle requires, 2 to 3, 4, whatever it is, boom, here's your refinance. All of a sudden you go, wow, I'm sure glad I did that. But your point's well taken. You sit around waiting on the perfect time, sort of like the stock market. Like, are you ever going to pick the top and the bottom perfectly? Not unless you're lucky. Get into something that makes sense, got a trend that's going to go up for you. And it's sort of the same thing here. That, just like you're saying, that you don't have to marry the rate. You just date the rate. And that sounds a lot like date rape. So I'm trying to be careful.
Date the rate.
Date the interest rate. Let's add interest in there so nobody thinks we're creepy. But nevertheless, no, your point's well taken. So
I would like to know from you what's super interesting is I have real estate in Texas. You try to evict somebody from Texas, it's like you go up and knock on the door, and it's get down, let's get out, and the sheriff's right behind you. Here, California, oh my gosh,
yeah,
it's a
you could
financial
listen.
It's a time and financial investment.
You could listen to my last episode. It was about tenant buyouts, and it was kind of elaborating on really the only way to do this now is a cash for key scenario, because with
In
the free
California?
legal help, yeah, I mean, with the free legal help that tenants have, and the landlord pays for his street price, the time and the money outlay is completely lopsided. And like a state, could be Arizona, it could be Texas, could be Tennessee, that the evictions are not a factor there. So you basically can do what we used to do here, is buy a building that's way under market, deferred maintenance, just ask everyone to leave, they leave, put it back in good stature, raise your rates as fast as you want, and apply a little fairness to the equation, which we don't have here.
For sure. Yeah.
So out of state is intriguing for a lot. Obviously, we see a lot of our friends moving to those places like Texas, Florida, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Not just from quality of life and economics, but like from an investment side, a lot of the stuff we pull our hair out over here are just not there.
They're
So
100%. Yeah. My
yep.
recommendation to borrowers is listen to your loan officer, respond daily. Don't argue with them. Just get them what they need, because the loan officer they'll understand everything the underwriter wants. And if you give them this much stuff and they ask for this much stuff, just give it to them and they will carve it down to this much and give the underwriters what they need, only what they, because regardless of whether people think it's right, wrong, or indifferent, underwriters check boxes. They just do their job. They work their 8 hours and they go home. They want things just to be clean. So super clean documentation, organized, quick responsiveness, and deals will fly. I mean, I think the last one you and I did, we had docs and I can't even remember, 12 days or something.
Nick and I have worked together for a number of years. He did a loan on the property we're actually selling right now, and then we're in constant contact on any sort of need. Truly the most professional and responsive. Like the responsiveness is unparalleled with how you do your business. And that's why it's always a pleasure. And plus I learn something from you every time I speak with you. But yeah, the last one we just completed a month or two ago, it was really cool because on the 5+ stuff, and I guess this is a timing issue too, but I'm used to waiting 30, 45, maybe even more on the timeline to get a loan to where it's going to get funded. And on these 2 to 4 unit deals, it seems like, at least in this frame of time, and who knows if that's like a steady, but under 3 weeks, the thing is done. And I know that has a lot to do with your prowess and your professionalism in preparing that file. And that's something to remember, everybody who's listening, is the loan origination person, a guy like Nick or whoever else, they're on our side. They want to fund the deal. They make their paycheck doing that. The other side of the coin is the source of the financing, the bank or whoever you're with. Those guys tend, in my mind, to see maybe more like a cubicle 9 to 5 person who doesn't have as much, let's say, of a passion to get the thing done. So that the intermediary, a guy like Nick, is going to put that package together in a way that he knows is just right for that cubicle person to say, oh, that looks good, let's push it through. Just go ugly early, get all the facts out on the table for the originator. He will assemble that stew and something that tastes good to the underwriter, if I'm using the right analogy. So,
And I do like go ugly early. Just go hard up front. You ever see Usain Bolt run the 400?
oh yeah,
He
absolutely.
crushes people like the first 300 and then he cruises. And if something goes sideways, he can still have margins to finish the race and crush everybody. I think that's the way to roll. Yeah, if you can get everything done up front, and there's something that people need to understand in the business. And you may take offense to this because I know a lot of brokers do, and I'm a real estate broker as well. And having been a real estate broker for a number of years that does nothing but lending, you have a whole bunch of people that are in this transaction. And you tell me if I'm wrong. We got escrow, we got title, we got notaries, we got appraisers, we got inspectors, we got buyer, seller, we got real estate agent, seller, real estate agent, buyer, lenders, underwriters. Unless you're bringing a bunch of cash to the table, you better do whatever the loan originator, loan officer says, because she's the one bringing all the money to the table to make it happen. That's one thing. The second thing I'll tell everybody is that you have two people that do what I do. One is a loan originator, and I've had many loan originators work for me, and the other is a loan officer. And I've had a few that have worked for me. The loan originator is going to take your name and all your information and put an application together and pass it off to a processor. They're just originating loans. The loan officer is going to do the same thing. Then he's going to ask you for your W-2 and your pay stub and your bank statements and your credit report and letters of explanation and put all that stuff together and give it to nobody and drive that thing through to funding. I don't let anybody touch my files. Nobody touches my files. So that's important for borrowers to know. Originators versus officers.
I totally dig it, Nick. And I'll let you know that I'm going to have all your information in the show notes. Folks, I highly recommend that you give Nick a call on anything you need, especially in the 1 to 4 space. Highly professional, knows how to get the job done. And it's, like I said, it's not just a pleasure to work with you. It's just a pleasure to talk with you because I learned so much and you explain things in a way that I understand, and that's not an easy challenge at times for me.
Listen, man, I appreciate you saying that. I'm going to give you my mom's phone number, Eric, so you can call her and tell her these things for me.
Yeah,
You know,
right. Your mom and your wife. Hey, you got to
yeah.
make believers out of them. But in all seriousness, all your information will be in the show notes. Again, give Nick a call. Tell him what you're thinking about doing. If there's somebody who can help you, he's it. And Nick, we really appreciate having you with us today.
No worries. I appreciate it, Eric. You be good. Be safe.
This has been the Everything Apartments podcast. I'm your host, Eric Christopher. Stay tuned for another episode coming soon.